LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the April 22nd edition of LiberalViewer Monday Media Mixup. Thanks for joining me. I picked out the 13 best, most newsworthy clips from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States, for what should be a really informative, educational, fair use media criticism and political commentary show for you all today. I'll also be briefly analyzing the cable news coverage of day one of Trump's New York criminal trial, which was today, opening statements and the beginning of the direct examination of the first witness, David Pecker. And that's all part of the dual topic of my video. As you can see from the title, Trump New York trial begins as Republicans split over Ukraine aid. Again, the Sunday shows didn't have that much coverage of the Trump New York criminal trial, even though it was the day before. I guess they've been kind of covering it all weekend and all week, and the whole jury selection of last week, that didn't really get covered at all in the Sunday morning news analysis shows. They spent a lot more time covering what happened in Congress, because on Saturday, the day before the Sunday shows, they passed all of these foreign aid bills, and especially this Ukraine aid bill, where more Republicans voted against it than voted for it. And I'm going to cover that topic second. I'll spend some time on the Trump's New York criminal trial first, but I actually have political comedy clips for both topics, both coming from MSNBC's Chris Hayes and his show All In with Chris Hayes. First, from last Thursday, before these foreign aid bills passed the Congress, there was already evidence of the big split in the Republican Party. Some of the, like Marjorie Taylor Greene and some other Freedom Caucus members were worried they were going to change the rules with Democrats' help to make it harder to get rid of Speaker Mike Johnson, or in other ways make it harder to pass bills that the Freedom Caucus wants to pass. And so they formed this floor action response team that Chris Hayes joked about last Thursday over in this clip.
So the epic struggle between House Republicans and other House Republicans continued apace today. Political reporting that conservatives in the House Freedom Caucus were signing up to take shifts to monitor the chamber floor in order to prevent their own party leaders from making unilateral moves that could curb their power. You see, their fear is that their own House Speaker, Mike Johnson, might use some crafty moves, including reaching across the aisle to Democrats, to change House rules in ways that would make it easier to vote on legislation they oppose and, crucially, harder to throw Johnson out of the Speaker's post. And so the House Freedom Caucus formed a floor posse. They're calling it the Freedom Caucus Floor Action Response Team.
I wanted to keep going on that clip. Somehow I cut that clip too short, but I think you saw that it had the acronym there for the Floor Action Response Team. I'll have to go back and see if I can redo that clip because I messed it up. But I have another. I noticed that for some reason with my video editing this week, I moved some of the ends of the clips the wrong way somehow. I'll have to work on that. I apologize that you didn't get to see all the drawn out fart jokes that Chris Hayes made there. I think I can probably figure it out so that I can redo it though. And I might even be able to redo it. Let's see if I can go to that completed one. 418, right? Yeah. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how I lost the end of that. Here. In fact, I'm gonna do it for you right now. I feel so bad about having messed up that clip, and I have the computing power here to, I don't know what I just did. Did I do like two versions? No. But I have the computing power where I think I can actually process it. Oh, see, it's already right there. Sorry, here to make up for the having cut off the clip, I'm actually going to do it better. Here we go.
And some people don't. Like, come on. Yikes.
Oh, see, that's what happens when I try to do it on the fly there. I added in the commercial at the beginning. So I apologize here. You want to watch? I'm not going to play the commercial. I'll deal with it later. I think you get the gist of the joke anyway. I don't know why that worked, but or it didn't work. But anyway, actually, I could probably fix it again here. So yeah, I apologize for, oh, I will get rid of this and this. And I see I'm doing too much. Sorry, I'm messing up the beginning of my show here. So, let me delete.
And some people.
So the epic struggle between House Republicans.
Oh, and now I will show you the second joke. And this is actually not a joke that Chris Hayes was trying to make. See, this is messing up my transition here, but here, let me see if I here. I'm going to delay here for another 10 seconds. And hopefully I can now show you the clip I meant to show you at the beginning. See, it's the first clip. Let's see if this one works. Okay, let me see if I can do it the right way now. But this happened to me. Okay, it's a fool's errand. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to get you the second joke. I'm sorry I wasted all your time there for 3 minutes or something. Sorry, I apologize for that. But here's the second political comedy clip that Chris Hayes didn't expect, but you can see, I think, why he ended up laughing pretty uproariously. This is on the topic of the Sandoval hearing that happened this morning. That's a special thing in New York. I'm not licensed to practice in New York, but I've learned this just for the Trump trial, where based on this 50-year-old case, if you have to, the prosecution has to tell the defendant what they're going to cross-examine, what prior bad acts they're going to use to try to impeach the defendant if the defendant chooses to testify. And that's explained by this lawyer, Diane Kiesel, who was on MSNBC's All In with Chris Hayes on Friday. And I think you can see what Chris found so humorous over here.
What's the standard here? So they presented examples of things like the Jon Karl example. I think things having to do with the civil fraud and in the Engoron case. What is the standard whereby judges decide what's the line that you can or can't bring it in?
It's a balancing test. Every defendant has a right to testify in his own behalf. But if he chooses to do so, the jury has a right to know who this person is. Right. So any criminal, vicious, or immoral acts in this person's life are fair game. However, it's a balancing test. You don't want this jury to convict the defendant if it's going to. This is a bad guy. So you look for prior bad acts that go to whether a person puts the phraseology is, does he put his own interests ahead of the interests of society? So you're looking at crimes. That's the phrase. We've
about Donald Trump.
I know. Oh,
well,
okay.
I mean, it's just
well, that's the
person we're describing here. Does he put his own interests over the interests of society?
Never thought of it that way. It's a 50-year-old case. We all say the line over and over. But what you...
So yeah, that's kind of funny that there's a case applying to Donald Trump where the standard is, does this person put their own interests above the interests of society? But so I think that was pretty funny. And as I saw in the live comments that Z Alpha said, so I should fix it while I show the other clip. And I actually did, I think, figure out a way to fix it while I show the other clip. Let me see. This is the original joke I wanted to show you about the Freedom Caucus floor action response team that I already kind of introduced earlier over here.
So the epic struggle between House Republicans and other House Republicans continue to pace today. Political reporting that conservatives in the House Freedom Caucus were signing up to take shifts to monitor the chamber floor in order to prevent their own party leaders from making unilateral moves that could curb their power. You see, their fear is that their own House Speaker, Mike Johnson, might use some crafty moves, including reaching across the aisle to Democrats, to change House rules in ways that would make it easier to vote on legislation they oppose and, crucially, harder to throw Johnson out of the Speaker's post. And so the House Freedom Caucus formed a floor posse. They're calling it the Freedom Caucus Floor Action Response Team, shorthanded as FART. Aims to guard against an unannounced request to pass resolutions that would stealthily limit their leverage. And by the way, it is not clear who supplied the FART acronym, but no one has denied it. Either way, it was successful in keeping the House floor empty. This afternoon, Speaker Johnson cleared the air, announced there would be no changes to the House rules for now. Congressman Eric Swalwell is a Democrat of California.
So there. Now, I didn't shrink it down to 75%, but I did show you the whole extended clip because I actually thought he kind of went too far in going, I mean, I'm not sure that the fart joke is necessary at all on a news commentary program, but then extending it out with all the wordplay, I don't know. Does that make it better or worse? I don't know. You can let me know what you think in the comment section. But that was the first political comedy clip I wanted to show you on the topic of the split in the Republican Party that has got this whole floor action response team activated. And then the second clip was on the New York criminal trial of Donald Trump that began this week. And you heard about the Sandoval hearing where I believe the result was that the judge let in about half the things the prosecution wanted to use, the prior bad acts where if Trump testifies, which is a decision only he gets to make, there are like two decisions the defendant makes. This is something I know very well from being a criminal defense attorney in the past, that the two decisions the defendant makes are whether to plead guilty or go to trial, and whether to testify or not testify. Those decisions, they get the last word on that with consultation with their lawyers, but with the lawyer. Lawyer basically makes all the other trial strategy decisions and in consultation with the client, but the lawyer basically gets the last word on pretty much everything else except those two things. So it'll be up to Trump to see if he testifies. He heard from the Sandoval hearing that they'll be able to talk about the E. Jean Carroll verdict. They'll be able to talk about his New York fraud, him being found liable for civil fraud in New York. So there are some prior bad acts that he might not want brought up. He actually would be a really bad witness, but who knows? He's kind of a wild card, and since the decision is up to him, maybe he'll really want to do it. That would be awesome, but somehow I don't think it's going to happen, even though he says he will. But that especially makes me think it's not going to happen. Anyway, I wanted to show you a few more clips, both from the Sunday shows and from today's coverage, to talk about the New York criminal trial that the opening statements and the first witness started today. The shortest of the news summaries was the only one from yesterday that covered the criminal trial. So that's CNN State of the Union. It's about a minute long. Dana Bash previewing the upcoming criminal trial in this clip.
Hello, I'm Dana Bash in Washington, where the State of our Union is in session. We begin this week with Donald Trump adjusting to an unprecedented challenge. Tomorrow, lawyers in the first criminal case against a former president are expected to give opening statements in New York, arguing over the charges that Trump falsified business records to cover up hush money payments to an adult film actress just before the 2016 election. Trump denies the charges. He finds himself in the extraordinary position of spending 4 days a week in court instead of on the campaign trail, being criticized on the stand without being able to interrupt, while his opponent, President Biden, visits key swing states. Last night, Trump's first planned rally since the case began was called off due to bad weather. So the next time Americans will likely hear from him is likely right outside a courtroom. Here with me now is a longtime Donald Trump supporter and potential vice presidential pick, South Dakota Republican Governor Kristi Noem.
And so, yeah, to CNN's credit, they did cover this historic first trial of a former president on criminal charges in U.S. history. In their opening news summary, it didn't come up in any of the other news summaries that I'm going to show you later. Although I think in some of the teasers, which is like right in the cold open or very beginning of the show, where they like talk about what all the topics are going to be, they covered it in a couple of the news programs. I don't think they covered it at all on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. And I'm not sure they did on Meet the Press. No, they talked about it in the panel discussion on Meet the Press. But CNN State of the Union did do some cross-examination of one of in the Newsmaker interviews with South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem. And Dana Bash did a pretty good job of fact-checking some of her false statements about the Trump's legal troubles. I'm not going to show you that clip, but if you want to read that transcript I put that link in the live comments and also down in the video description. By the way, down in the video description under Media Mentioned, I put short summaries of all 13 of the clips, and then below that I put the sources of pretty much all the clips, and so that's something you can check out later. But the next clip I want to show you, or I mentioned earlier that I wanted to show you how the different cable outlets were covering day one of the trial, and I thought CNN did the best job of covering the trial live, even though there are no cameras in the courtroom, but they do have producers, the news producers from the programs in there, sort of like live tweeting what's going on. And I thought CNN had like the best live tweets. Here's here's like the CNN setup. You can see here while they're doing their discussion, over on the left they have like who is the attorney and who is the witness, and very detailed like tweets that were scrolling on the left side there. This is something that they didn't cover on MSNBC. That David Pecker said that if everyone covered that it was checkbook journalism, or both CNN and MSNBC covered that as head of the National Enquirer, he engaged in checkbook journalism, which means they would pay people for their stories. But only CNN got this detail that if it was over $10,000, he would have to approve. You can see they kind of had the live tweeting over on MSNBC on the right there, but it was less detailed, bigger type, I guess, so it's easier to read. But that you can see the checkbook journalism there, that part. Fox News did not do that. They had occasional updates that were really tendentious, like over and over again, like repeating Trump's legal team, their points, and occasionally mentioning some of the things the prosecutor said, like in a Trump sandwich or whatever. And just to prove my point, I'm going to show you they didn't live tweet it during Outnumbered, which was the show going on. Oh, look at this. There's a kitten. It's Chong. Chong has come to visit while I'm talking about the coverage here. Chong did watch it with me, so but I don't think he really has anything to say. But he did come to say hello for a minute. I do have a bonus Cheech and Chong the kittens clip at the end. But anyway, I was saying on Fox News Outnumbered, they did not in any way do any of the live tweeting, or they had no scrolling live coverage of what was going on. But then finally, in the next program, America's Newsroom, like a half hour after the end of the trial, they had their legal editor, Kerri Urbahn, I think her name is, came in to talk to Sandra Smith. And this is pretty much how this is covered all day on Fox News. You can see how skewed in favor of Donald Trump it is. This goes on for almost 5 minutes, and well, you'll see what I mean over here.
Back to our top story at this hour. The opening statements have wrapped in former President Donald Trump's historic criminal trial here in Manhattan. Let's bring in Kerri Urbahn, Fox News legal editor. She was in that courtroom this morning. Kerri, first, your top line thoughts as we see day one of these opening arguments. What have we learned?
Well, first, I was startled to see that the former number 3 at the Department of Justice was there presenting oral arguments today on behalf of the state. I've said this before on the show. That spot at DOJ is a highly coveted position, and typically it's the path right to being a corporate bigwig, making a lot of money. So the fact that Matthew Colangelo left that spot to go work for a local prosecutor here in New York means he's got to be a true believer. Like, this is a personal thing, and I was shocked to see him be the one to deliver
there's
opening
the former
arguments
president
today.
right now. This is a live look outside of the courthouse. We just saw his motorcade a second ago. Thought we might see him as well. We always keep our eye, Kerri, because we never know when he will step up to that microphone that is set up. He did so in the last hour. Just wanted to draw our audience attention to that moment, but please do continue.
Yeah, so that was surprising to me to see that he was the one who was presenting opening arguments for the state. And another thing that I just some context in general, entering into an NDA is not illegal. And that's at the heart of this issue, at the heart of this case, rather. And the state kept talking about this quote unquote conspiracy to influence the election. And they were saying this kind of in this dramatic, scary way throughout their opening argument. And I was sitting there thinking, conspiracy to influence the election, that's not a crime. That's called running a campaign. And if they're referencing a vague New York law, there's a problem there. But then secondly, like I said, entering into an NDA is not illegal. And third, Trump's defense team said that it was someone else at Trump Tower who Trump didn't necessarily even know, who characterized these expenses as legal expenses. And they were legal expenses because it was compensation for an NDA. So I sat there thinking, I'm really not sure what the crime is.
Wow. That's pretty remarkable. And considering we just saw the former president a moment ago, let's rewind to this morning on his way into court. These were his words, Kerri.
These are all Biden trials. This is done as election interference. Everybody knows it. It's in coordination with Washington, everything, including the DA's office. It's in coordination with Washington. I just want people to understand that this is done for purposes of hurting the opponent of the worst president in the history of our country.
What did you think when you heard that, Kerri?
Well, again, the state made this big to-do out of conspiracy to influence the election, which again is not a crime. One could look at a lot of things as when someone runs a campaign and say, well, isn't the whole purpose to influence, an election so that you win? And then they go to, well, by ways of an illegal contribution, a campaign contribution that he didn't report. But keep in mind, the Department of Justice declined to bring that same charge against Donald Trump. And two, again, there would be a leap involved in even making that argument, because then what would it be? In paying Stormy Daniels this amount of money in return for this NDA, he was somehow making a contribution to his own campaign that he didn't report. Wow. People do this all the time. And for all we know, Donald Trump could have been making these kinds of agreements his whole life. We don't know.
So just a moment ago, we saw the former president as he left the courthouse and entered Trump Tower there. David Pecker, obviously this is the key first witness to take the stand in all of this. What do you want people to know about him?
Well, his testimony actually has nothing to do with the heart of the case itself. The state is bringing him in to paint a picture, their picture, that this is the kind of scheme that Trump engaged in a conspiracy to undermine the election in an unlawful way, again, via a contribution to himself, via a hush money payment. If it sounds convoluted, it's because it is, and it's hard to follow. And David Pecker's part in all of this has to do with the catch and kill scheme with Karen McDougal, which people in the media frequently do. They buy the rights to a story and then choose not to publish it. People may not like that, but there's nothing illegal about that. And the state was arguing that they did that in order to help Trump win the election. But again, at the end of the day, it actually has nothing to do with the heart of the case itself against Trump.
Well, thank you very much, Kerri. We were very lucky to get you fresh out of that courtroom this morning on set here in New York today, and we thank you for that. And on we go into day two.
Huh. Oh, this is the other kitten. This is Cheech. Chong's over there in the corner. Cheech came up to say hello. They both are like fans of the show, or at least they tend to come in here while the show's going on. So I think that lived up to the introduction, the pre-criticism I gave it, that it was very biased in favor of Trump. You saw what's her name, Kerri Urbahn, basically parrot all of the talking points from the Trump legal team, and some of them. First, her job is to get the facts, and she's saying, even if it was, influencing an election, first, influencing on an election isn't illegal, but then later on she mentions, with a campaign contribution, it's a campaign contribution. And then she says, but how could it be a campaign contribution? Because it's from Donald Trump, so he'd be contributing to his own campaign. That's not illegal. Well, actually, you forget that it was Michael Cohen who paid the $130,000, and then later Trump paid him back. Actually paid him back extra, so it would, and they made it look like it was a legal retainer for legal services, but paid him so much that even after he paid taxes, he would get his $130,000 back plus an extra $60,000 bonus for doing Trump's dirty work or whatever. And Michael Cohen specifically pled guilty in federal court. One of the things she said there was, the Southern District of New York decided not to prosecute this, but they did prosecute Michael Cohen, and they couldn't prosecute a sitting president based on this legal memo that sitting presidents can't be prosecuted. You remember that from the whole Mueller report, and I don't want to go off on that tangent, but that's just a little bit of the misinformation there, totally one-sided. Where's the report on what was in the prosecutor's opening statement? Well, I guess illegal conspiracy to influence a campaign with an illegal campaign contribution kind of got in there in the middle of all the contradictory talking points. But anyway, that was pretty bad. But just to prove that's not just a one-off, I actually have the only discussion of the New York Trump legal case from Fox News Sunday. This is one of the programs where they had it at the beginning in that cold open part before the news summary that I'm going to show you in a few minutes, which was all about Ukraine and Israel, their news summary. But then later in the program, they had on their legal panel Jonathan Turley and Thomas Dupree. I think Thomas Dupree is a member of the Federalist Society. Jonathan Turley, I've talked about him many times before because he's a Fox News shill, basically. He's a total hack at this point and will just give, the legal opinion base. There are occasional exceptions where he it's so blatant that he has to say, well, maybe there's something there. I think he said that, some of the Trump cases aren't terrible, or the Mar-a-Lago documents case maybe, but the thing about the Fox News legal panel, or all of their discussions of this, they have multiple legal experts, but they're all on the same side. CNN and MSNBC, they actually had more Trump aligned lawyers, even a former Jim Trusty was on one of the programs, and they had Mark Short, who was the chief of staff to Vice President Mike Pence, on one of the program on CNN or MSNBC. And then I can't remember that other guy who also gave the Trump point of view. So they did actually have people with Trump point of view on both MSNBC and CNN, but it's all Trump all the time. It's a one-sided legal analysis all the time on Fox. And you'll see that from Thomas Dupree and Jonathan Turley, even though this is the only coverage on Fox News Sunday, and like you can't even figure out they talk about hush money, but it's not really about hush money because I mean the one thing that legal editor in the last clip said that's true is a non-disclosure agreement that's not illegal. Paying hush money that's not illegal. It's only when Michael Cohen paid $130,000 to Stormy Daniels to help the Trump campaign. That's an illegal campaign contribution. And then when they wrote it out as legal services, that is a false business record, and false business record with that if you create a false business record in New York with the intent to cover up some other crime, the campaign finance violation, well, that's a felony. That's how we got here. But what I was saying is a non-disclosure agreement is not illegal, but it's not the hush money payments. It's the whole chain of New York law where a false business record to cover up another crime is a felony. That's the issue, and that doesn't ever get discussed on Fox News. Jonathan Turley here also misstates what happened in the case where, because Trump keeps trying to intimidate witnesses, the prosecutors decided not to tell the defense until Sunday night who their first witness was going to be, David Pecker. They let them know on Sunday night. And he makes it seem like they didn't disclose who the witnesses are. They disclosed the whole witness list a long time ago. The only thing that they did, because Trump, keeps attacking witnesses on social media, is they decided not to say what order they were calling the witnesses. And that's not a disclosure violation, which Jonathan Turley claims it is. And I pretty much criticized this clip from Fox News Sunday, but I'll talk about the one-sided analysis a little more after we watch it together over here.
They've taken away my constitutional rights to speak, and that includes speaking to you. I have a lot to say to you, and I'm not allowed to say it. And I'm the only one. Everyone else can say whatever they want about me. They can say anything they want. They can continue to make up lies and everything else. They lie.
Former President Trump lashing out against the gag order placed on him in the New York hush money trial. It is time now for our legal panel. George Washington University law professor and Fox News contributor Jonathan Turley, and former Principal Deputy Assistant Attorney General Tom Dupree. Welcome back, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shannon.
Okay, so we're into the hush money trial. We think arguments will start up tomorrow. Now, there's this back and forth, too, about the fact that the defense says they don't know who the witnesses are going to be. And the Washington Post reporting on this said, the two sides had sparred Thursday over the issue, with prosecutors saying they would not provide witness names in advance because of Trump's repeated violations of a gag order barring him from talking about witnesses in the case. We have a look at some of the potential witnesses who could show up. But, Jonathan, how do you prep for day one if you don't know who might be on the witness stand?
Right. This has been a problem with criminal defense attorneys like myself. This is a standard problem of prosecutors holding on to the last minute to make disclosures. What concerns me about this is the judge's response. Because the judge should have said you should err on the side of disclosure. And also should point out whatever sanctions there are for the gag order, those will come at my judgment after we have a hearing. This is not on the menu of options for you. You can't restrict the fairness of the trial or disclosures of witnesses because you think he violated an order. That's up to me. I think the court could have done that. And this is one of those times where I feel like the judge could have done more. There's no reason to do this, in my view, but it really works against due process and a fair trial. You want the parties to be prepared. And here you've got the district attorney saying, I'm just going to unilaterally withhold them because I think there's a violation here.
Mm-hmm. So what jurors will get to is, we think, witnesses who we don't know starting tomorrow. Potentially, we're at least opening arguments. But what we're told about the jury that's been seated is it includes, quote, multiple lawyers. Politico says Trump's legal team might see a silver lining in having lawyers on the jury. Quote, they're not emotional thinkers. This one trial consultant says the profession requires them to do analysis, and emotional thinkers get more easily swayed by the side that goes first, the side that tells a good story. Tom, is it a plus or minus that he's got some lawyers on the?
I think it is a plus for Trump that there are lawyers on the jury, and here's why. Prosecutors notoriously don't like seating lawyers on juries precisely because they are independent thinkers who often think they know better than the prosecutors do. They can be a bit of a wild card. They come to jury service with a lot of legal education, and you never know what goes on in the jury room. And look, having chosen juries, having tried cases in front of juries, lawyers are going to spend the next 6 weeks trying to read the tea leaves, watching the jurors' reactions to the witness testimony as it comes in. But no one is ever going to know what those jurors are truly thinking until it's time to deliberate and render a verdict. But the fact that there will be lawyers participating in deliberations and rendering the verdict, definitely a plus for the defense.
This is one of the few times where Tom and I disagree, because I have long opposed lawyers even being allowed to be on juries. On this case, it could be highly damaging, because many of us are still debating what this indictment means. We're not convinced, or we're not certain what the crime is that was the motivation of the alleged, what was a misdemeanor under state law. To have lawyers in there, they can be given undue influence with a jury. And if they say, oh, no, this is clear, this is standard, that may sway them. That's why in some states like Illinois, they used to say if you had even more than 1 year of law school, you wouldn't be on a jury. I think it's not a good thing for a defendant because of the influence that can be exercised over the jury.
I feel like it's gotten me out of jury duty many times. That being
So, yeah, and then they move on to Trump's immunity claim before the Supreme Court, which is coming up on Thursday. That's the last day. The Supreme Court put it all the way to the last day that they're hearing arguments for the term. One of the bogus things the Supreme Court did, I talked about on a previous show, just to delay Trump's January 6th trial as long as possible. Anyway, I pretty much pre-criticized that clip, but the other criticism I have of Jonathan Turley is, I mean, you can kind of see in his, opposing having lawyers on juries, he's like, it's like such a projection, there'll be some lawyer on there who will say some totally bogus thing about the law and convince other people about it, because that's like his job on Fox News, isn't it? To come up with bogus ideas about, oh, the prosecutor has to tell you the order of witnesses, not just all of the witnesses, but the order of witnesses. That's like a courtesy, and the judge approved it. I don't know, but I pre-criticized the clip, that part of the clip. Anyway, that's what passes for legal analysis on Fox News. I showed you a couple examples, but it's just all day, every day. It's only the Trump defense talking points that make it. There are, every now and then there are occasional exceptions, but anyway, that's the last clip on the New York trial of Donald Trump topic. And now I'm going to move on to the second topic, which is the passage by the House on Saturday, the House of Representatives, with bipartisan votes, but splitting the Republican Party on Ukraine, where there are actually 112 Republicans voted against Ukraine aid. Only 101 Republicans voted for it. So it's like people talk about the Putin wing of the Republican Party is it's seemingly, I guess, more than half of the party. And I'm going to show you some news coverage of it. This is now from longest to shortest. I left out CNN because they did my first topic, but here is ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, Jonathan Karl, doing 5.5 minutes, just slightly longer than Fox News Sunday, but at least giving you a lot more of the facts than you'll see from Fox News Sunday. Here's the ABC This Week with George Stephanopoulos news summary from on all these topics over here.
Good morning. Welcome to This Week. This weekend, we saw a rare outbreak of bipartisanship in what had seemed to be a hopelessly dysfunctional Congress. Just maybe the dawn of a new day for the House of Representatives. Or it might have been a final act of yet another Republican speaker destined to be brought down by hardliners in his own party. Here's what we know. After months of delay, the House overwhelmingly approved billions of dollars in funding for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. The vote on Ukraine funding was lopsided, a resounding show of support for Volodymyr Zelensky's efforts to defend his nation from Russia's aggression. But look more closely at the vote. Look at how Republicans voted. Just 101 Republicans voted yes. 112 voted no. That's a majority of House Republicans voting against support for Ukraine, a defining moment for the Republican Party and a screaming indicator that the party of Reagan and the hawks who followed him is a distant memory. This is Trump's party, not Reagan's. It's a party that has fully embraced Trump's vision of America first. And while that is Trump's slogan, it was also the slogan of the isolationist Republicans who nearly a century ago opposed America's support for Great Britain in the beginning of World War II. Yesterday's vote was also a defining moment for Speaker of the House Mike Johnson. He did his job. He allowed the House to work its will, but he had to stand up to many in his own party to do so. Minutes after the vote, President Zelensky took note of the man who made it possible, posting on X, quote, "I am grateful to the United States House of Representatives, both parties, and personally, Speaker Mike Johnson, for the decision that keeps history on the right track." Speaker Johnson had to rely on Democrats to make it happen. And as he now faces a challenge to his leadership, Mike Johnson will almost certainly need to rely on Democrats to survive as Speaker, a fact that could radically change the power dynamics in Congress. So we begin this morning with ABC's Selena Wang on Capitol Hill. Good morning, Selena.
Hey, good morning, John. This is a defining moment for Speaker Johnson. After months of delay, the House has finally passed $95 billion in aid to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. But Johnson, he took enormous risks to get this done, defying the far-right wing of his party. But his job is safe, at least for now.
I think we did our work here, and I think history will judge it well.
For weeks, Marjorie Taylor Greene threatened to force a vote to remove Mike Johnson as Speaker of the House if he dared to allow a vote on military aid for Ukraine. But now that the vote has happened, Greene still has not pulled the trigger, at least not yet.
I'm actually going to let my colleagues go home and hear from their constituents.
Now she'll have to wait until the House is back in session at the end of the month.
There is more support. It's growing. I've said from the beginning I'm going to be responsible with this. I support my majority. I support the majority next time. I do not support Mike Johnson.
So far, only 2 other House Republicans have signaled they'd backed Greene's potential motion to vacate Johnson as Speaker. But with the razor-thin Republican majority, that could be enough to oust the Speaker. But Johnson says he doesn't care because support for Ukraine is more important than his job.
To put it bluntly, I would rather send bullets to Ukraine than American boys. My son is going to begin in the Naval Academy this fall. This is a live fire exercise for me, as it is so many American families. This is not a game. It's not a joke. We can't play politics of this. We have to do the right thing.
Johnson's support for Ukraine has won him some unlikely allies, Democrats who could help him save his job.
Traditional conservatives, led by Speaker Mike Johnson, have risen to the occasion.
You think you can trust the Speaker?
Well, so far it looks that way.
Republican hardliners are outraged by Johnson's turnaround. For months, he had said any aid to Ukraine should be tied to funding for U.S. border security, despite recently rejecting a bipartisan border deal that former President Trump opposed.
We're worried about America's border. He seems to be more worried about Ukraine.
And Republican hardliners are even angrier that Johnson reached out to Democrats to get this done.
I'm concerned that the Speaker's cut a deal with the Democrats to fund foreign wars.
I'm very disappointed, and I've told Speaker Johnson that personally. I've continued to see capitulation and an unwillingness to even fight.
Johnson says he's not worried about the threats.
I don't walk around this building being worried about a motion to vacate. I have to do my job.
Johnson may need Democrats to keep his job, and so far, at least some say they will.
I will vote to keep Johnson as Speaker.
I think that there will be Democrats who are happy to support him if he wants it.
In addition to aid to Ukraine, the House also passed $26 billion in aid to Israel. In the end, 37 Democrats voted against that. So now this package of bills, it heads over to the Senate, where they're expected to vote on this on Tuesday. And for his part, President Biden, he thanked the House for getting this done, saying that this sends a powerful message to the world about American leadership. John?
Thank you, Selena. I'm joined now by the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Congressman Michael McCaul.
And I don't have a clip from Michael McCaul because I took one from Tony Gonzalez. It was Tony Gonzalez on ABC, right? Yeah. and because he's in the panel discussion and he says something very provocative. That's clip 11 if you're looking down in the clip summaries in the video description. But you saw there that the ABC reporter and Jonathan Karl both did a good job of reporting on the split in the Republican Party and also on the votes and the situation in Ukraine, I would say, with the Ukraine aid, not so much on Israel. Fox News Sunday, they have Shannon Bream reporting on the bills. I don't know anywhere in here if you get to find out that 112 Republicans voted against the Ukraine aid bill and only 101 Republicans voted for it. The whole split in the Republican Party and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tom Massey and all the people upset at Mike Johnson, that doesn't show up in the Fox News Sunday news summary for some reason. And actually, it used to be I would watch Fox News because, or one of the reasons I would watch Fox News is because they had the best reporting on the Republican Party, seeing as they're, like a propaganda outlet of the Republican Party. They know a lot of Republicans, and occasionally some journalism would occur, and they would tell you the different sides of the Republican split. But I think they, the New York Post called Marjorie Taylor Greene Moscow Marge or whatever, or Moscow Marjorie, and has really, I think, trying to stop Marjorie Taylor Greene from getting any news coverage out of this. Because if you watch that last news summary, the weird thing is Marjorie Taylor Greene filed this motion to vacate against Speaker Mike Johnson a long time ago, but never put in the slip or whatever to get it to be to get it priority so that they have to vote on it, which she could do. And why is she let it sit for so long? Well, if you watched that video, you saw she was surrounded by reporters, and that's basically her goal. The longer she draws it out, the longer that she keeps getting the media attention. And I think maybe Fox News and Rupert Murdoch and the Republican propaganda machine has decided to try to minimize the amount of attention they give to Marjorie Taylor Greene. But that's just my speculation. You can let me know what you think. After here it's Shannon Bream talking about the bills, and then they go to Greg Palkot in Kyiv and Trey Yingst in Tel Aviv to talk about the aid bills without really talking about what happened in Congress over here.
Hello from Fox News in Washington. Praise from Israel and Ukraine and condemnation out of Russia after the House passed billions more in funding for Israel, Ukraine, Taiwan, and in aid for Gaza on Saturday. A coalition of Democrats and Republicans passed the $95 billion foreign aid package, with nearly $61 billion for Ukraine, more than $26 billion for Israel, and $8 billion for Taiwan and other Indo-Pacific allies. Another bill passed in the House would force China to divest from the U.S. version of TikTok, and it imposes new sanctions on Beijing, Russia, and Iran. In a moment, we'll talk with two senators who will begin debating those bills Tuesday, Republican Lindsey Graham and Democrat Richard Blumenthal. But first, we've got team coverage from Israel with Trey Yingst and from Ukraine with Fox News senior foreign affairs correspondent Greg Palkot in Kyiv. And Greg, we're going to start with you.
Shannon, the Kremlin reacting very, very quickly to the word that more U.S. military aid is being sent to Ukraine. They call it a road to escalation, which will deepen the crisis around the world. But as we found out on the ground here for the past couple of days, that funding is coming just in time.
Desperate times in Ukraine. More than 2 years into the war, and Russia is gaining ground with a massive advantage in artillery, and Ukraine short of air defenses, leaving infrastructure shattered. The locals desperate.
I think it's like a lifeline for Ukraine and for Ukrainian army, because the situation is getting critical.
Outsiders concerned too. This American military veteran is fighting and training alongside Ukrainians. He speaks from the front line in the country's east.
We need aid right now
to stop the current Russian offensive actions that are happening. So we need that aid right now to just hold that back.
And they're getting it. Along with help to Israel and Taiwan, the House of Representatives okaying $61 billion in aid stuck in Congress for months, replenishing empty ammo stocks plus direct military aid to Ukrainians, loans, humanitarian assistance. Despite resistance, many saw the threat.
It's a dangerous time. Three of our primary adversaries, Russia and Iran and China, are working together, and they're being aggressors around the globe.
Not soon enough for Ukrainian President Zelensky and his team as they tangle with arch foe Russian President Putin. Without American help, they've been warning they'll lose. Now they have hope.
Thanks to each and everyone who supported our package. This is a solution to protect lives.
Now, while this new U.S. military assistance to Ukraine does not include any American boots on the ground, a new report this morning finds that the military staff at the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv will be beefed up to as many as 60 service members. Not in combat roles, but in a crunch, they could get the job done. Shannon.
All right, Greg Palcott in Ukraine. Greg, thank you. We want to turn now to Fox News foreign correspondent Trey Yingst in Tel Aviv, Israel. Hello, Trey.
Shannon, good morning. As the conflict in the Middle East develops, Israel is likely to receive billions in new U.S. funding to support their war efforts.
On this vote, the yeas are 366 and the nays are 58. The bill is passed.
A critical funding bill for Israel passing the House of Representatives on Saturday. The plan to send $26 billion to America's key Middle East ally now heads to the Senate and is expected to reach President Biden's desk.
We've also have language that prevents it from going, any of the funding going to Hamas or any other bad actors. That's a very important element of oversight.
House Speaker Mike Johnson assuring those skeptical of the bill that the money won't end up in the hands of Israel's enemies. As Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu thanked lawmakers for their support, Netanyahu posted to X saying the U.S. Congress just overwhelmingly passed a much-appreciated aid bill that demonstrates strong bipartisan support for Israel and defends Western civilization. Thank you, friends. Thank you, America. Nearly 200 days into the war between Israel and Hamas, there are emerging regional threats that Israeli leadership says must be immediately addressed, namely that of Iran and its proxies, who fired hundreds of missiles and drones into Israel earlier this month.
We have been very, very clear from here, from the beginning, that we do not want to see this conflict escalate.
While the Biden administration continues to support Israel amid calls for de-escalation, reports indicate the U.S. State Department plans to sanction an Israeli military battalion for human rights violations. The sanctions will prevent the Netzah Yehuda unit from receiving American training or support due to their actions in the West Bank before the current war began. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reacted to these sanctions that are expected, calling them the height of absurdity. Shannon?
And we'll talk more about this. Trey Yingst from Israel. Thank you, Trey. Joining us now, South Carolina Republican Senator Lindsey Graham and Connecticut Democrat Senator Richard Blumenthal.
And yeah, they didn't really talk about the split in the Republican Party at all. They talked about Ukraine and Israel and somehow skipped over all that. Didn't even talk about it with Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal. They just talked about like national security issues. So yeah, that was the news summary from Fox News Sunday. I think I pretty much pre-criticized it. And the next two news summaries, just like the ABC one, managed to talk about the split in the Republican Party and the threat to the speakership of Mike Johnson. Even though the NBC News Meet the Press one you're about to see is about half as long, and the CBS News Face the Nation one is like 20% of the Fox News Sunday, but somehow they found the time to actually get that news story in, which is important and is on NBC News Meet the Press's news summary here, which actually has a bunch of information about Ukraine because they had an exclusive interview with the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, and as that's like a bias of all the corporate news media, is if they have an exclusive guest, they skew their news coverage towards it. And I'll talk about that a little more after we watch the Meet the Press news summary together over here.
Good Sunday morning. We begin with our brand new NBC News poll and the headline: President Biden is closing the gap with former President Trump. Trump leads Biden by 2 points in a head-to-head matchup, 46 to 44%. Biden has narrowed that deficit against Trump from 5 points in January. And when third-party candidates, including Robert F. Kennedy, are included, Biden leads by 2 points, 39 to 37%. The president's job approval has also ticked up to 42%, up 5 points from January. The last time we've seen a 5-point increase for an incumbent president in their re-election year was Bill Clinton in 1996. There are still troubling numbers in the poll for Biden. He trails Trump by 22 points on dealing with inflation and the cost of living. All of it comes amid a major foreign policy development. 6 months after the president delivered an Oval Office speech pledging wartime aid for Ukraine, $61 billion in new funding finally passed on Saturday, 311 to 112.
The bill is passed.
A moment of bipartisanship in a Congress primarily defined by its dysfunction. 101 Republicans and 210 Democrats voted in favor, but more Republicans, 112, opposed it. Congress also passed new aid for Israel and Taiwan, along with a measure to force TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, to sell the app. New aid for Ukraine came only after Republican Speaker Mike Johnson, who once opposed it, did an about-face and put his job on the line to get it through amid threats from 3 far-right Republicans to oust him.
If we turn our backs right now, the consequences could be devastating.
You're being asked to resign. Will you? Mr. Jeffries, about that, and do you plan to if it's brought?
No, listen, as I've said many times, I don't walk around this building being worried about a motion to vacate. I have to do my job. We did. I've done here what I believe to be the right thing, and that is to allow the House to work its will. And as I've said, you do the right thing and you let the chips fall where they may.
Now, the Pentagon has said it has a massive infusion of military aid for Ukraine ready to go. It comes as Ukrainian President Zelensky said that without this support, we will have no chance of winning. Ukraine's top military commander issued a bleak assessment of the Army's positions on the Eastern Front, saying they have worsened significantly in recent days. And the top American military commander in Europe told members of Congress Russia will soon be able to fire 10 shells for every Ukrainian shell.
If one side can shoot and the other side can't shoot back, the side that can't shoot back loses.
Joining me now is the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky.
And I will have a clip of Vladimir Zelensky talking about the sort of the Trump side of the pro-Putin wing of the Republican Party, and how that split in the Republican Party is not just in Congress, but it's also the anti-Ukraine, pro-Trump or pro-Putin wing of the Republican Party is kind of led by Donald Trump, and you'll see Vladimir Zelensky responding to a couple questions from Kristen Welker about that. But first, let me show you the final news summary from CBS News' Face the Nation, where, like I said, they covered the split in the Republican Party better than they did on Fox News in 5 times the length, and I'll talk about that a little more after we watch that clip together over here.
Good morning and welcome to Face the Nation. 6 months to the day after President Biden requested the funding for Ukraine, it has finally passed the House. The $95 billion foreign aid package includes $61 billion for Ukraine and rebuilding U.S. weapons stockpiles, $26 billion in aid for Israel. That includes some humanitarian aid for Palestinians, and $8 billion for parts of the Indo-Pacific region, which includes Taiwan. A bill also forces the Chinese-owned firm ByteDance to sell TikTok or risk a U.S. ban. Speaker Mike Johnson, along with a minority of Republicans, worked with a majority of Democrats to get the Ukraine aid through. That bipartisan effort has made some ultra-conservative House Republicans livid, and they're threatening to remove the speaker from his job just 6 months after a similar scenario cost Kevin McCarthy the speakership. The Senate is expected to pass the funding bill later this week. We begin today with the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Mark Warner.
And I'm not going to show you a clip of Mark Warner, the Face the Nation clip I'm going to show you is Representative Tom Cole talking about the threat to the speakership of Mike Johnson. Oh, and by the way, in the live comments along the way, I saw this question from Grumpy Cat asking any thoughts on why Mike Johnson changed his mind on the aid. And you saw a little bit of coverage of that. He mentioned how he has a son, I think, is it the Naval Academy, someone going into the armed forces, but I mean, that's been going on for a while, and going into like one of the academies doesn't put you on active duty right away anyway. But the reporting I saw was that he got intelligence briefings that said that if they didn't pass more aid for Ukraine, that Russia was going to win the war before the end of the year. And I guess he believed the intel more than like Donald Trump believed the intel he was getting. But that would be my answer to Grumpy Cat based on all the different news sources I watched on this. But now I'm going to get to the first newsmaker clip. This is President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, like I said, responding to threats to his country from the Putin wing of the Republican Party that is apparently led by Donald Trump, because he famously said that he could like solve the Russian invasion of Ukraine in a day. And there's been reporting that that's because he's going to tell Ukraine they got to give up territory, like cede all the territory currently held by Russia, Crimea and the Donbass region, that, that's all Russian now, and that's going to be the end of the war. And then he did that whole thing where he said, I wish Putin would attack NATO countries that haven't paid their bills, is what he said, but that's like a total misunderstanding of what NATO is. No one pays their bills to NATO for defense. They're supposed to spend 2% of their gross domestic product on the military. That's like paying their bills, and sometimes they haven't always done that, which I guess is a problem, but not a reason to vitiate the Article 5 of the NATO treaty that says an attack on one is an attack on all, and the only time it's ever been used is when the United States was attacked on 9/11. All the NATO countries came to our aid, so that's not great. And anyway, here's Volodymyr Zelensky, I think, is being very diplomatic. He's dealt with Trump before. Remember, Trump's first impeachment was for holding up aid to Ukraine to try to get dirt on Joe Biden. And anyway, or to fake dirt on Joe Biden, like start an investigation just so I can say he's being investigated, that kind of fake dirt. And that doesn't come up in this clip, but that's, I think, maybe what's Volodymyr Zelensky is thinking about in his answer, like Trump could be president again, and that's pretty clear from the way he responds to Kristen Welker on Meet the Press yesterday over here.
The Washington Post is reporting that Donald Trump has privately said he could end Russia's war in Ukraine by pressuring Ukraine to give up some territory like Crimea, like the Donbass region. What is your reaction? And realistically speaking, do you see this war ending in a negotiation with Russia?
По-перше, я хотів би сказати, що я Firstly, I would like to say that, well, I'm a president of the country at war, and rumors and different hearsay, I don't believe that. When Trump comes here and would tell me their formula of peace, then I would be able to provide the response. At the moment, I know that, well, things Putin wants, for sure they cannot happen. And I'm sure that people who know him well, they know that you can never trust Putin. It's impossible. So the strategy of ending the war should be based not on the words which Putin says or some other people from his entourage say, but on something very specific, something very tangible, when Ukraine that is independent and democratic, and I'm confident that everyone is interested in that. All the political elite in the US also are interested to have Ukraine independent and sovereign and democratic. It's of interest for both the Republicans and the Democrats.
President Zelensky, back in February, Donald Trump encouraged Putin to invade NATO countries that he doesn't believe are contributing enough to defense spending. What kind of a message do you think that sends to the world?
Well, I don't know the details of that speech. I know for sure if Ukraine fails, then Putin definitely will invade the Baltic countries. Why? Not because there's some interesting idea or strategy, but because Putin wants to return the influence of the Soviet Union. And he really wants to retake through force, through war. He wants to retake all former Soviet republics and now independent states. Whether they are in the NATO or not, he doesn't care. That is why this is his strategy. Of course, after the Baltic states, also Poland and parts of Germany would also be in
the... So yeah, I think President Vladimir Zelensky stuck to his talking points about the threat from Putin and how Ukraine was just the first stop on his tour through the Baltic nations. And at the end there, he was talking about Germany, and he kind of got cut off by Kristen Welker. I wanted to hear more about that theory, but I think he also answered in the way that I explained before I showed the clip, in terms of keeping his options open in case Donald Trump is the next president of the United States. And the next couple clips I'm going to show you are some Republicans from the House of Representatives talking about this split in the Republican Party. The most graphic response, or the kind of like maybe too spicy for the Sunday morning shows, came from Representative Tony Gonzalez over on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, where he was, I'm sorry, not on ABC. This is from CNN's State of the Union, and you'll see Dan Abash does this intro video about the split in the Republican Party and the threat to Speaker Mike Johnson, and then asks Tony Gonzalez whether Mike Johnson's going to lose his speakership over the Ukraine vote, and he has a very spicy response for CNN that I will talk about a little more after we watch together over here.
Don't walk around this building being worried about a motion to vacate. I have to do my job. We did. I've done here what I believe to be the right thing, and that is to allow the House to work its will. And as I've said, you do the right thing and you let the chips fall where they may.
And fall they did. Welcome back to State of the Union. The House adjourned after finally passing a foreign aid package that is now headed to the U.S. Senate. My panel joins me now. Nice to see you all. And we have a real live actual House Republican congressman here, Tony Gonzalez of Texas. So you voted yes on the foreign aid package. Do you have confidence that at this point, given that it is still possible that Marjorie Taylor Greene will push to kick him out of the Speaker's chair, that he can survive?
He will survive. Look, the House is a rough and rowdy place, but Mike Johnson is going to be just fine. I served 20 years in the military. It's my absolute honor to be in Congress, but I served with some real scumbags. Look, Matt Gaetz, he paid minors to have sex with him at drug parties. Bob Good endorsed my opponent, a known neo-Nazi. These people used to walk around with white hoods at night. Now they're walking around with white hoods in the daytime. What didn't surprise me that some of these folks voted against aid to Israel, but I was encouraged to see by a nearly 10-to-1 mark that Republicans supported our allies on the battlefield.
Wow. Okay. I should say that the federal government did look into Matt Gaetz and those allegations, and they decided not to prosecute.
Unlike Joe Biden's poor Uncle Bozie.
So, that's one of those clips I messed up. Anyway, but I played it as far as I wanted to play it there, and yeah, I agree with Dana Bash there. Wow, scumbags who wear white hoods in the daytime. That's pretty harsh for a Republican talking about a Republican. I don't know. They all just went off on like a 1 week recess, but when they get back in town, I don't know who he's gonna sit with in the cafeteria or whatever. Or I don't know. I guess if there's a split, there's still like 101 Republicans on his side, or who knows. But that's pretty harsh evidence that there is this split in the Republican House. Representative Tom Cole kind of says the same thing, but in more diplomatic language, and I'll talk about that a little more after we watch that clip together over here.
Congressman, before the break, we've been talking about this vote the House had yesterday to approve the $95 billion package. There was a decision here for Speaker Johnson that was an important one. He basically put his job on the line. As we know, there's this movement among House conservatives led by Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene to try to oust him from power, in part because this Ukraine aid bill. Do you think this is a real threat to his leadership?
Well, I take anything seriously, but no, I don't. Look, I think it's a relatively small number of Republican members. Frankly, just as it was in McCarthy's case, there were only 8 people.
Exactly.
But the point is, I don't think there's unified Democratic support. There was unified Democratic support to remove the speaker. I think both sides have now seen how dangerous this is, how irresponsible it is. And quite frankly, I think it's unlikely that Democrats who supported Ukraine, not as many supported Israel as we would have liked, but they did support Ukraine. I think they're unlikely to remove the speaker over that. Although, to be fair, they removed McCarthy after he did what he asked them to do, which was keep the government funded. But again, I don't think that's going to happen in this case. But if somebody wants to do it, it's within the rules and they can take their shot.
Well, what you're saying there is that Democrats you trust would protect Speaker Johnson from being ousted because they wouldn't vote.
I don't think you'd lose very many Republicans. We didn't lose very many Republicans with McCarthy. So it doesn't take very many Democrats to either not vote or oppose it. And frankly, I don't think we'd lose the same number of Republicans that we lost with Kevin McCarthy. I think even people that disagree with the speaker...
You wouldn't get to 8 Republicans.
I don't think so. Look, I think there's a lot of people that like this speaker, that respect this speaker, even when they disagree with him. They know he's honest, he's a straight shooter. They also had a taste of what it's like to go without a speaker for 3 weeks. I don't think they want that again. I certainly don't think they want it close to an election.
So, yeah, I guess he didn't really bag on his fellow Republicans, but he did... posit this really weird theory I hear from some of the House Republicans that Kevin McCarthy was actually deposed by Democrats because they didn't vote for him, but it's not the job of the Democrats to vote they're supposed to vote for Hakeem Jeffries, and then Republicans are supposed to come up with the votes for their Speaker of the House. And that whole thing about how, the Democrats voted Kevin McCarthy out for, keeping the government funded like he said he would. Well, he did that, but then he went back on the deal and totally trashed Democrats and said it was their fault and totally politicized it. That's why they didn't want to support him. And that's one of the weird things is Kevin McCarthy was less ideological than Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson is more far right wing in his views, but apparently he's more trustworthy because I guess Kevin McCarthy is such a weasel. He has no principles. He just did whatever necessary to become speaker, and that did not serve him well in terms of getting trust from anyone, Republicans or Democrats. And anyway, the final newsmaker clip I want to show you is a Democrat, Representative Ro Khanna, actually, even though he's a progressive Democrat, fairly progressive anyway, he is willing to vote to save Mike Johnson by tabling any motion to vacate, and there are other Democrats as well. So actually, that part of what Tom Cole said is probably true, that this time Mike Johnson probably could be saved by Democrats, and that's the final newsmaker clip that I'll talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
Connor, does Speaker Johnson deserve credit for how this played out?
He does. Look, we came into Congress together, and he always cared about civility. He actually led the civility pledge.
Right. Yeah.
And we had one issue, which was give individual votes. Don't lump things together. And I give him credit for doing this. I would actually vote to table any motion to vacate him. You know, Chairman McCall quoted Churchill. One of the things Churchill said is that America always exhausted every wrong option until doing the right thing. Yeah. And this shows that American democracy still is very strong.
Okay, you just said something significant. You said you would oppose the motion to vacate. In other words, you will protect Speaker Johnson's job if Marjorie Taylor Greene and the others go through with their threat to try to remove him.
I would, through the end of the term. I expect Speaker Jeffries will be there in 2025. But look, and I'm a progressive Democrat, and I think you would have a few progressive Democrats doing that. And I disagree with Speaker Johnson on many issues, and I've been very critical of him. But he did the right thing here, and he deserves to keep his job till the end of this term.
Now, would you and fellow Democrats who will protect him at this moment ask for anything in return? I mean, do we effectively have... You heard me ask Congressman McCall, a coalition government in the House?
I'll leave the negotiations to Speaker Jeffries, but I don't think everything in politics needs to be transactional. I think here you have Speaker Johnson, who not only put this up for a vote, but he also separated the bills, which I thought was courageous. He let people vote their conscience on Taiwan, on the offensive aid to Israel, on Ukraine, and I give him credit for that.
So, yeah, it seems like even though the Republican Party has split and 112 Republicans voted against Ukraine aid with only 101 for, that maybe another reason Marjorie Taylor Greene put her motion to vacate in but hasn't activated it is because there are enough Democrats to save Speaker Mike Johnson. I mean, he doesn't need that many Democratic votes to table the motion to vacate and keep his job at least through the end of the year or past November, when whoever has the majority gets to elect a new speaker. But anyway, that's the last of the newsmaker clips I wanted to show you, and I hope you appreciate the time and effort I put into picking out clips on both of my two topics there. And I did promise I would have a bonus kitten clip, my two kittens, Cheech and Chong. I don't think I've shown you a clip of their food and water setup, so I tried to take a video of that earlier today, and got some camera curiosity from both of them before it finished over in the bonus Cheech and Chong, the kitten clip over here. So there you go. Some extreme close-ups from Cheech first and then Chong, who you both got to see live during the live stream. So anyway, that's the end of the program. I don't think that I'll have another reason to upload a video till next Monday, although there is that immunity thing, and who knows what's going to happen in the trial. So maybe I'll be back between now and Monday. My show next Monday will probably be on the later side because I'm going to go do some lobbying at the California State Capitol in the middle of the day, so I won't have as much time to prepare. But anyway, I'll see when that happens, and unless I have some other reason to upload a video, I guess I'll see you next Monday and every Monday through next January 2025, when we find out who's going to be the next president or the continuing president. So until then, or until I have some other reason to upload a video, I guess I'll be seeing all of you around the internet.